piece of artwork that I selected is titled Alice by Amando Manginelli. I did a little research to see who Alice was and what her story was about, but wasn't able to find anything. Therefore, I'm not sure exactly what Alice's story is, where she comes from, or what Manginelli hoped to portray through his painting of her, if anything. Um, However, when looking at the portrait in class, I thought Alice may be or descent from an Aboriginal community. Her long dark hair, brown eyes, and the color of her skin reminded me of our Aboriginal communities within Canada. Alice, however, is she's not wearing traditional Aboriginal attire, but rather is wearing a blue dress with a cross hanging around her neck. This had me thinking about the residential schools that the Aboriginal peoples of Canada endured and where they were forced to give up their own culture and heritage and take on a Christian lifestyle. When looking at the portrait, Alice herself does not appear to be overly happy, but gives a rather intense stare to those who are viewing her painting. Perhaps that stare is her only method of defiance against those who took away from her family and inflicted years of abuse on her. When bringing this portrait into the classroom, however, I think I would start a lesson off with a class discussion of who they think Alice is, where do we think she comes from, and what do you think her history is. Through this discussion, I would encourage my students to spend some time looking at the painting and thinking about what it could tell and why. Students can sit in a circle, and if they wish, they can share their ideas of who they think Alice is. I think the rest of the lesson, though, I think I would divide the class into pairs and give them a range of props and costumes that they can choose from that they feel best resonates with who they are as an individual. Then they'll be paired up. One will become the painter and one will be the client. And the painter will paint their client, essentially, including all their props and everything. And then they would switch positions so that the client would become the painter and the painter the client. So essentially, everyone in the class gets their own portrait done with their own props and costumes that they feel resonates with them. And then I think a gallery walk would be done at the end so that the class can look at everyone else's and see what they can learn about their classmate through these portraits. For a second lesson, though, like I said, I think I look at Alice from an Aboriginal background, so I would touch base with the residential schools, but I think before doing that, I want to discuss Aboriginal culture. Because it's Nova Scotia, I would focus on the Mi'kmaq culture. And in doing so, I would probably bring in a member from the Mi'kmaq culture into the classroom, and they could discuss like stories, traditional ceremonies like smudging. They can bring in like dance and music, just as an all-around way for students to interact with the Mi'kmaq culture. And it's also someone that they can directly ask questions to about essentially what it is to be Mi'kmaq and what it entails. Another lesson, I think, once we've explored what Mi'kmaq culture is, I think we can start off with a comparison of Alice's portrait with other portraits of Mi'kmaq people and kind of compare what the differences are. For example, like I already said, Alice isn't wearing traditional attire, so ideally students would pick up on that and kind of have a discussion about why they think Alice is dressed differently than traditional Aboriginal peoples. Once that's done, I think students could listen to or read aloud of Stolen Words by Melanie Florence. This storybook explores the loss of language as a result of the residential schools. So I think once the story is finished, students can discuss with a partner if they think Alice could have been a victim of the residential school, and then they can write down their thoughts, giving reasons why they think so, and share at the end of the lesson if they chose. Sorry. For another lesson, now that we've kind of explored a little bit of Mi'kmaq culture, I think this one would be a bit more risque, is we would discuss Mi'kmaq religion and a little bit of Christian religion. Naturally, it would be emphasized in the classroom that while the people have different belief systems, none are wrong, and that we need to be respectful of all of that. So I think how we would do this would be after having discussion about kind of what Christian religion's about and what Mi'kmaq religion was about. The class can be divided into groups of 4, and they create a mural through painting about how they think they would feel if someone told them what they believed was wrong and wouldn't let them believe in that anymore. This mural can be either abstract, so the students can just use colors they feel would best resonate with them, or they can draw or paint, an actual image. Once students have completed their murals, they can write as a group what their artwork is about and how it relates to Alice. Would she be happy, sad, mad, why? When each group is done, they can do a gallery walk around the classroom to view each other's artwork and write up. As a final lesson, I think students would do well to take another long look at Alice's portrait and kind of think about everything they've learned about so far with Mi'kmaq culture and a little bit of the residential schools. I think that as a final activity, students would write a letter from the perspective of Alice, writing a letter back home. So they can discuss such things as how she feels now that she's been taken away from home, what she's learning at her residential school, and what she misses about her own culture. And then they would probably sit in a circle at the end, and if students chose, they could read their letters to the class. That's about it for lessons there. So hope you guys are all going well. Thanks.